My husband said the family trip was cancelled. Money's tight, we'll stay home this year. I believed him and worked that weekend. Later I saw his sister's post. A big dinner, everyone there but me. I said nothing. Then he texted, "Need $2,800, it's urgent." I wrote back, "Ask your family." Then I stopped paying and started healing. "Need $2,800, it's urgent." Henry's text glowed on my phone screen while I stood in the hospital supply closet, surrounded by boxes of gauze and the smell of antiseptic. 3 days earlier he told me the family lake trip was cancelled because money was too tight. 3 days earlier I'd believed him and picked up extra weekend shifts. But 2 hours ago I'd seen his sister Melissa's Instagram post, all of them at the lake raising glasses around a feast, my husband grinning in the corner of the frame. Now he wanted his monthly payment for his mother's mortgage. My thumbs moved across the keyboard. "Ask your family." The phone rang immediately. I let it buzz against my palm 3 times before declining the call. Another nurse needed the supply closet, so I grabbed the box of 4 tubes I'd supposedly come for and walked back into the fluorescent chaos of the ICU. My shift still had 4 hours left, but my marriage had just ended in 5 words. It hadn't always been about money. 7 years ago Henry and I had stood in a courthouse wearing our best clothes. His borrowed suit, my mother's dress taken in at the waist, promising to share everything. We'd laughed about our wedding budget of $300, joking that love was free and that was all we needed. Back then his family had seemed charming. Nancy brought homemade casseroles to our studio apartment. His father Robert helped us move our second-hand furniture. Melissa called me sister, and meant it, or so I'd thought. Before we dive deeper, if you believe that trust and honesty are the foundation of any marriage, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach others facing similar betrayals. The financial bleeding started slowly, so slowly I hadn't noticed the first cuts. It began with Nancy mentioning offhand that the property taxes on the lake house had increased. "These old family places," she'd sighed over coffee in my kitchen, eyeing the water stain on our ceiling. "Sometimes I wonder if we should just sell it." All those memories of Henry growing up there, though. I'd looked at Henry's face, watched it crumble at the thought of losing his childhood summers, and heard myself offering to help. "Just a little, just temporarily. Maybe we could cover the taxes this year," I'd said. "Until things get better." Nancy had hugged me then, tears in her eyes, calling me the daughter she'd never had. The check started at $500, then grew to $1,000, then somehow became $2,800 every month without any discussion. Henry handled it all, assuring me his parents were getting back on their feet and would repay us eventually. 3 weeks ago Nancy had shown up at our apartment with her famous apple pie, the one with the lattice crust that took hours to make. She only made that pie when she wanted something significant. I'd served it on our mismatched plates while she talked about the dock needing repairs, how grateful she was for our help, how she bragged to her church friends about her generous daughter-in-law. "Not many girls your age understand family loyalty," she'd said, patting my hand with her manicured fingers. Her wedding ring, upgraded last year to a 2-carat diamond for their 30th anniversary, caught the light. I'd been wearing the same 1/4-carat chip Henry had proposed with, telling myself size didn't matter. The conversation that changed everything had happened at our wobbly kitchen table, the one we'd pulled from a curb 5 years ago and painted white to hide the scratches. Henry had sat across from me, fidgeting with his wedding ring, unable to meet my eyes. "The lake trip's off this year," he'd said, his voice carrying the weight of false disappointment. "Money's just too tight, Lauren. Maybe next summer." I'd reached across the table and squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses from his golf clubs, the expensive set his father had given him for his birthday, which he used every weekend to network, for his consulting business that never seemed to land any actual clients. "We're in this together," I'd said, already calculating which weekend shifts I could pick up. "I'll take some extra hours. We'll get through this." He'd smiled then, that boyish grin that had made me fall for him in college when we were both broke students surviving on ramen and dreams. "We're a team, babe. Thank you for understanding. Mom and Dad will be disappointed, but they'll get it." I'd pictured Nancy's face, imagined her sadness at not having the annual family gathering. The guilt had twisted in my stomach as I logged into the hospital system and signed up for the weekend shifts I'd previously declined. 12-hour days Saturday and Sunday. Time and a half pay that would help cover our expenses while Henry's family struggled. That Friday morning before my weekend shifts, Henry had been unusually affectionate. He'd made me coffee, the good stuff from the specialty shop, not our usual grocery store brand, and watched me get ready for work. When I'd grabbed my bag heavy with the protein bars and instant noodles that would be my meals for the next 48 hours, he'd pulled me close. His hands had lingered on my shoulders, thumbs rubbing small circles through my scrubs. "Lauren," he'd said, and something in his voice had made me look up. His eyes were bright, almost feverish. "Thank you for understanding. For being so supportive. I know this isn't easy." "We're married," I'd said simply. "Your family is my family." He'd kissed me then, longer than our usual morning goodbye, his hands tangling in my hair. When he'd pulled back, there'd been something in his expression I couldn't read. Guilt, maybe, or grief, or just the stress of financial pressure. "I love you," he'd whispered against my forehead. "Love you too," I'd replied, already calculating whether I could grab a coffee from the hospital cafeteria or if I should save the $4. Now, standing in the ACU with my phone dark in my pocket, I understood that expression. It hadn't been stress or love or even guilt. It had been goodbye. He'd been saying goodbye to the wife he was about to betray, to the trust he was about to shatter, to the version of me who would have done anything for his family. The supply closet moment kept replaying as I moved through my shift duties. 2 hours ago everything had made sense. 2 hours ago I'd been exhausted but proud, working extra to support my struggling family. Now I saw it all differently. Every transferred payment, every sacrifice, every weekend shift while they gathered at the lake without me. $2,800 a month. For 3 years. The ICU corridors stretched ahead of me as I pushed through the rest of my shift, that text exchange burning in my pocket like a hot coal. 4 hours suddenly felt like 40. Every patient I touched, every four I inserted, every chart I updated, it all happened through a fog of disbelief. My body moved on autopilot, muscle memory guiding me through procedures while my mind churned. Saturday morning arrived too quickly. 5 hours of restless sleep on our lumpy mattress, alone in our bed, before my alarm dragged me back to consciousness. Henry hadn't come home, or maybe he had and left again. His pillow remained untouched, still carrying the dent from Thursday night. I dressed in fresh scrubs, grabbed my work bag and headed back to St. Mary's for my weekend shifts. The trauma bay erupted 20 minutes into Saturday's shift. The ambulance radios crackled with incoming reports. Multi-vehicle collision on I-75, at least 6 cars involved, multiple criticals inbound. We had 3 minutes to prepare before the chaos arrived. The first stretcher burst through the automatic doors. A teenager, maybe 16, unconscious and bleeding from a head wound. I grabbed the gurney's side rail, helping wheel him into trauma room 3 while the paramedic rattled off vitals. Behind us, more sirens wailed their approach. "Lauren, I need you in here," Dr. Martinez called out, already gowned and ready. His hands moved with practiced precision as we worked to stabilize the boy. Blood seeped through my gloves within minutes, staining the blue latex dark red. The mother's screams echoed from the hallway. Someone had told her which room her son was in, but protocol kept her outside while we worked. For the next 6 hours I didn't think about Henry once. Crisis has a way of narrowing your focus to the immediate present. Insert this for. Check these vitals. Comfort this family member. Move to the next patient. The teenager survived, barely. His mother collapsed against me when we finally let her in, her tears soaking through my scrubs as she thanked me over and over. I held her steady, whispered that her son was strong, that he'd pull through, while my own world quietly crumbled in my chest. By the time I finally got a break, it was past 7 in the evening. The cafeteria had already closed, leaving me with vending machine options. I bought a stale sandwich and weak coffee, carrying both to the staff break room. My feet throbbed inside my compression socks. 12 hours down, 12 more to go tomorrow. I pulled out my phone to check messages. Nothing from Henry. But Melissa's Instagram story notification sat there, posted 4 hours ago. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The video loaded slowly on the hospital's struggling Wi-Fi. First came the lake at sunset, golden light dancing across the water. Melissa's camera panned across the scene with amateur enthusiasm. "Perfect family weekend," her voice chirped through my earbuds. "So blessed to have everyone together." Champagne glasses appeared in frame, multiple hands raising them in a toast. The camera moved to show the outdoor dining setup, string lights twinkling overhead, a table groaning under the weight of food. A glazed ham sat centerpiece, surrounded by corn on the cob, potato salad, coleslaw, and what looked like Nancy's famous peach cobbler. Then the camera swept past the people. Nancy in a new sundress, the coral color complementing her recently dyed blonde hair. Robert manning the grill with a spatula in one hand and a beer in the other. Jake with a woman I'd never seen before, presumably the girlfriend he'd been dating for 8 months but who was too shy to meet me. Brian, Henry's college roommate who'd driven 3 hours for this cancelled trip. And there, just for 2 seconds in the corner of the frame, Henry. My husband raised his beer toward the camera, his wedding ring glinting in the dying sunlight. He wore the Tommy Bahama shirt I'd bought him for Christmas last year, the one he said was too nice for regular wear. His face carried the relaxed expression of a man without worries, without guilt, without a wife working herself to exhaustion 40 minutes away. I watched it again. Then again. 17 times I played that video in the fluorescent-lit break room, each viewing revealing new details that cut deeper. The craft beer in Henry's hand, Stone Brewing IPA, $15 a six-pack. We'd stopped buying it months ago because of our budget. Nancy's sundress still had the Nordstrom tag tucked into the back, visible when she turned to hug someone. The table settings were the good china, the ones she claimed were too delicate to use regularly. Jake's girlfriend wore a tennis bracelet that caught the light. Brian had brought what looked like an expensive bottle of wine. Even the corn on the cob had those fancy holders shaped like tiny corn cobs that Nancy had bought last summer from Williams-Sonoma. My coffee went cold as I studied each frame. This wasn't a last-minute casual gathering. This was planned. Coordinated. The ham alone would have taken hours to prepare. Nancy's hair appointment must have been scheduled weeks in advance. The string lights were new, professional grade, not the cheap ones from Target. They'd all known. Every single person in that video had known they were coming to this cancelled trip while I'd been signing up for overtime shifts. My hands trembled as I closed Instagram and opened our banking app instead. I needed to see it again to understand the full scope. There they were, 36 months of transfers. $2,800 on the first of every month. Some labeled family support, others property tax help, a few marked emergency fund. $100,800 in total. I did the math differently this time. That money could have paid off my student loans. Could have bought us a reliable car. Could have funded our own vacations, real ones where both spouses were invited. Could have replaced our peeling linoleum, fixed our wobbling table, bought furniture that didn't come from curbs and garage sales. Sunday's shift began at 7 sharp. I'd managed 3 hours of fitful sleep in an on-call room, unwilling to drive home just to come back. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed the truth. Hollow eyes, pale skin, the look of someone running on fumes and betrayal. The day blurred together. More patients, more emergencies, more families to comfort while my own fell apart. Dr. Martinez pulled me aside around noon, concern creasing his forehead. "You okay, Mitchell? You seem off today." "Just tired," I managed, using my maiden name out of habit. He'd known me since before Henry, back when I was Lauren Mitchell, bright-eyed nursing student. "The weekend shifts are catching up." He studied me for a moment longer, then nodded. "Take a real break. Doctor's orders. At least 30 minutes, no phone, no charts. Just rest." I found myself back in the break room at 6 that evening, the same chair, the same view of the parking lot. This time when I opened Instagram there were new posts. Melissa had uploaded actual photos now, high-resolution shots of their perfect family weekend. The photos Melissa had posted were artistic, filtered to perfection. One showed the whole family lined up by the dock, arms around each other with the lake sparkling behind them. Henry stood between his parents, his smile wide and genuine. The timestamp read Saturday, 2:47 p.m., when I'd been holding that teenager's mother in the trauma bay. I closed Instagram and drove home through Sunday's empty streets. 11 p.m. and the city felt abandoned. My 8-year-old Honda wheezed at stoplights, the check engine light flickering its familiar warning. We couldn't afford to fix it, or so I'd been told. The radio played some ballad about trust and love and I turned it off, preferring the silence. When I pulled into our apartment complex, Henry's car wasn't in its usual spot. Of course not. He was probably still at the lake, sleeping off his weekend of family bonding. I climbed the 2 flights to our unit, my legs heavy with exhaustion. The apartment was dark, untouched since Friday morning. His coffee mug still sat by the sink unwashed. The bed remained made with military precision the way I always left it. I sat on our second-hand couch in the darkness, still in my scrubs, too tired to shower but too wired to sleep. The weekend played through my mind in fragments. The trauma bay, the mother's tears, Melissa's video, those 36 months of payments. My phone showed no messages from Henry. Not even a "how's your shift?" or "drive safe." Nothing. Monday morning arrived with surgical precision. 7 a.m. I heard his key in the lock. I was at the kitchen table having my first cup of coffee, when Henry walked in carrying a paper bag from the expensive bakery downtown and a carrier with 2 coffees. "Hey babe." His voice was bright, cheerful. His face carried a subtle tan, the kind you get from a weekend on the water. "Brought breakfast. Thought you might be hungry after your shifts." He set everything on the table with the casual ease of someone without secrets. Fresh bagels, cream cheese, even lox. Probably $30 worth of breakfast for our tight-budget household. He slid 1 coffee toward me, then leaned in to kiss my cheek. I didn't move away, but I didn't lean in either. "How was your weekend?" he asked, settling into his chair with practiced normalcy. "The shift's brutal?" I studied his face the way I'd assess a patient, checking for telltale signs, symptoms of guilt or deception. But Henry was a skilled performer. His brown eyes held steady contact, his smile remained easy, his hands didn't fidget. Just a husband asking about his wife's work weekend. "Yes," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "It was perfect. Oat milk, extra shot, exactly how I liked it. Tough weekend." "I'm sorry you had to work," he said, spreading cream cheese on his bagel. "I mostly just caught up on reports, did some work on the balcony. Got a bit of sun actually." He gestured to his face with a self-deprecating laugh. "Forgot sunscreen like an idiot." The balcony. Our tiny balcony that barely fit 1 chair, where the afternoon sun hit for maybe an hour if you were lucky. I nodded, watching him bite into his bagel, sesame seeds scattering across the table. "Your mom texted," I lied smoothly. "Said she needs the payment today." Henry didn't miss a beat. "Oh right. Yeah, the first already? Time flies. I'll handle the transfer after my shower." He stood, stretching like a cat in sunshine. "God, I'm sore. Must have slept weird. Or spent the weekend water skiing, I thought but didn't say." He headed toward the bathroom, already pulling off his shirt. I heard him turn on the water, then his off-key singing began. Some pop song from the radio. He only sang in the shower when he was completely relaxed, when life was good, when he had no worries weighing him down. I opened our laptop and logged into our joint banking account. The history loaded slowly, 3 years of transactions appearing line by line. I'd checked before, but never with this level of attention. Never with the knowledge that every payment had been a lie. January through December, 3 years running. $2,800 on the first of every month. Some months labeled mom's mortgage, others property tax help, a few medical expenses, and several just family support. I took screenshots of everything, methodically documenting each transfer. My phone became an evidence folder, organized by date and amount. The shower stopped. Henry would be out in 5 minutes. He was nothing if not predictable. I opened a new browser window and created a separate cloud storage account under my maiden name, uploading everything. The folder was titled simply Truth. By the time Henry emerged, hair damp and smelling of his expensive shampoo, I was back to sipping coffee and scrolling through my phone like nothing had happened. "I'm heading to the office," he announced, grabbing his messenger bag. "Client meeting at 9. "Which client?" I wanted to ask. The consulting business that never seemed to generate actual income? But I just nodded, playing the supportive wife one more time. Tuesday passed in strange normalcy. Wednesday. Henry acted like nothing was wrong and I matched his performance. We ate dinner together, watched TV, discussed mundane things like grocery lists and whether to renew our Netflix subscription. He mentioned his parents were doing better financially, maybe wouldn't need our help much longer. I made appropriate supportive noises while calculating how much of my life I'd wasted believing his lies. Thursday changed everything. I was at lunch in the hospital cafeteria, picking at a sad salad because the good food was too expensive for someone funding her in-laws' lifestyle. My phone buzzed with a text from Henry. "Babe, Need $2,800 today. Mom's mortgage is due. It's urgent. Can you transfer? I stared at that message while around me the hospital hummed with its usual controlled chaos. In the distance an alarm beeped. Someone's floor was finished. A doctor was being paged overhead. Normal emergencies, real ones, not the manufactured financial crises of the Hartley family. My thumbs moved across the keyboard with the same precision I used to chart medications. 5 words, ask your family. The phone rang within seconds. Henry's name flashed on the screen, and I could practically feel his panic through the digital connection. I stood up, leaving my half-eaten salad and walked quickly to the supply closet down the hall. It was the only private space I could find on short notice. What's that supposed to mean? His voice had lost all its casual confidence, pitched higher with stress. I closed the door behind me, surrounded by boxes of gauze and the sharp smell of antiseptic. It means I saw Melissa's video from your cancelled family trip. The one at the lake. The one where everyone made it this year. The silence that followed was complete, like the pause between heartbeats on a monitor, that moment when you're not sure if the next beat will come. Lauren, you don't understand. Henry's voice crackled through the phone, the panic rising with each word. I understand perfectly, I said, cutting him off. I've funded your family for 3 years while being excluded from it. I understand that I'm good enough to pay for your mother's mortgage but not good enough to eat dinner with you all at the lake. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Henry? Explain to me how it wasn't exactly what it looks like. His breathing was ragged through the phone. Around me the supply closet felt smaller, the walls of boxes closing in. A nurse knocked on the door, she needed supplies. I had to end this. Lauren, please just let me explain when you get home. Please. I have to go, I said. Actual emergencies to handle. Not the manufactured kind. I hung up and handed the nurse the gauze she needed, then walked back to my shift with my phone on silent. 6 more hours. 6 more hours of real problems, real pain, real healing, not the theatrical performance waiting for me at home. When I walked through our apartment door at 8 that evening, I thought I'd entered the wrong unit. Candles covered every surface. The coffee table, the bookshelf, even the windowsills. The overhead lights were off, casting everything in a golden, flickering glow. The dining table we usually ate takeout on was set with our wedding china, the stuff we'd gotten from Henry's aunt that lived in a box above the refrigerator. The smell hit me next, garlic, basil, something rich and tomatoey. Henry emerged from the kitchen wearing the burgundy shirt I'd bought him last Christmas, the one he said was too nice for everyday wear. In his hands, a bottle of wine. Not the $8 grocery store kind, the $30 anniversary kind. Lauren, he said, his voice soft, careful. I made dinner. Your favorite. From scratch. Pasta arrabbiata. He'd made it exactly 3 times in our 7 years together. Once when he'd proposed, once after a huge fight about his mother's first loan, and now. The manipulation was so transparent I almost laughed. Sit, he said, pulling out my chair. Please. Let me explain. I sat not because I wanted to hear his explanation, but because my feet hurt and I was curious to see how far he'd take this performance. He poured wine with shaking hands, then served the pasta with the concentration of a chef on a cooking show. Everyone feels terrible, he said, sitting across from me. The candlelight made shadows dance across his face. Mom's been crying all day. She never meant to hurt you. I pushed a piece of penne around my plate. The sauce was perfect, just the right amount of spice. Such a waste of effort. Your mom's been crying, I repeated slowly. The woman who just cashed my $2,800 monthly payment is crying. She didn't know I hadn't told you about the trip. She assumed. She assumed what? That I was working? Because that's what I always do. Work while you all play. Henry reached across the table for my hand. I pulled it back, placing it in my lap. We thought it would be easier, he said. You hate big gatherings. You're always saying how exhausting they are after your shifts. I say a lot of things are exhausting, Henry. That doesn't mean I want to be excluded from them while still paying for them. It wasn't about the money. It's always about the money. I took a sip of wine. Good wine. Probably charged to the credit card I'd be paying off. Your family has taken $100,000 from me. From us. While I wore scrubs with holes in them and drove a car that barely starts. That's an exaggeration. I have the bank statements. Every transfer. 3 years. Want to see them? His face changed then, the caring husband mask slipping just enough to show something else underneath. Fear maybe. Or calculation. They're my parents, Lauren. Family helps family. Apparently I'm not family. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the hiss of a candle flame hitting melted wax. Henry's jaw worked like he was chewing words, trying to find the right ones. Mom wants to talk to you, he said finally. To explain. She feels awful about the misunderstanding. The misunderstanding. Like it was a simple miscommunication about dinner plans rather than systematic financial exploitation and emotional exclusion. She can call me herself, I said, standing up. But I'm done sending money. And I'm done with this conversation. I left him sitting there with his candles and his pasta and his calculated remorse. Friday morning, Nancy's call came while I was getting dressed for my shift. Her name on my phone screen made my stomach turn, but I answered anyway, putting her on speaker while I pulled on my scrubs. Lauren, sweetheart. Her voice dripped with that southern sweetness she could turn on like a faucet. This whole thing has gotten so out of hand. Has it? I kept my voice neutral, clinical. We thought you were working, dear. Henry said you'd picked up extra shifts. We didn't want to make you feel bad about missing the family time. I tied my shoes slowly, letting her words hang in the air. So instead of inviting me and letting me decide, you lied to me. That was the kinder option. We didn't lie. Henry told me the trip was cancelled. Was that true, Nancy? Silence. Beautiful, damning silence. The money you send, it's not about that, she started again. We're grateful, of course, but family is about more than money. I agree, I said, standing up and checking my reflection. Which is why I'm confused about being excluded from family events I'm paying for. Lauren, please. The house, the mortgage, we could lose everything. Maybe you should sell one of the boats, I suggested, my voice sweet as hers. Or ask the family members who actually got invited to your gatherings. The real family. You don't mean that. I do. The transfers stop now. If you need help, ask your family. The ones in all those photos. I hung up before she could respond. Within 3 hours, the assault began on social media. Melissa, Henry's sister who'd posted the videos, started with subtle quotes on her Instagram stories. Family isn't about blood. It's about who's willing to hold your hand when you need it most. Then, some people will never understand sacrifice. By lunch, she'd escalated. A photo of the lake house appeared with a longer caption. This place holds every childhood memory, every family celebration, every moment that mattered. Some things are worth fighting for. Real family understands that. Others just see dollar signs. The comments under Melissa's post were vicious. Cousins I'd never met called me heartless. Aunts who'd never invited me to anything labeled me selfish. Someone named Barbara, who I think was Nancy's church friend, wrote a long paragraph about young people today not understanding family values. I screenshotted everything before Melissa blocked me entirely, adding it all to my growing collection of evidence. That weekend, Jake's text to Henry started appearing. Henry left his phone on the kitchen counter Saturday morning while he showered, carelessly or maybe intentionally. The screen lit up with message after message from his younger brother. Your wife is destroying everything. Mom can't stop crying. Dad says you made your choice and now look what happened. Maybe you picked wrong, brother. I photographed each one with my phone, my hands steady. Evidence. Documentation. Proof of who this family really was when the money stopped flowing. Henry emerged from the bathroom, saw me near his phone and quickly grabbed it. Jake's upset, he said, like that explained everything. Jake's been unemployed for 2 years, I replied. Maybe he should be upset about that instead. Monday morning came with a decision I'd been building toward all weekend. During my lunch break, I drove across town to a credit union I'd researched online. Different from our usual bank. No connections to any accounts Henry could access. The woman who helped me had warm brown eyes and silver streaks in her hair. Her nameplate read Patricia. I need to open a checking account, I said. Just in my name. Patricia didn't ask why a married woman needed her own account. Maybe she saw something in my face, or maybe she'd helped other women in my situation. She processed everything efficiently, professionally, without judgment. Will you be making a deposit today? She asked. I handed her my overtime check. $800 from the weekend shifts at the lake. The irony wasn't lost on me. Money I'd earned while they'd vacationed was the first deposit into my freedom fund. The debit card Patricia handed me was plain blue plastic, nothing special. But holding it felt like holding a key to a door I'd forgotten existed. I tucked it into a pocket Henry never checked behind my hospital ID. That evening, I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop while Henry watched TV in the living room. I logged into the hospital's HR system and changed my direct deposit information. Starting with the next pay period, my earnings would go to my account. Mine alone. Henry glanced over during a commercial. "Whatcha working on?" "Just updating some work stuff," I said. He nodded and turned back to his show, unaware that I'd just cut the financial cord that had bound me to his family's manipulation. Wednesday, I used my lunch break differently. Instead of eating in the cafeteria, I drove to a small office building 3 blocks from the hospital. Dr. Sarah Chen's practice was on the 2nd floor, a quiet space with cream walls and a view of a small garden. Dr. Chen was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. Her office felt safe. Soft chairs, warm lighting, tissues strategically placed on every surface. "What brings you here today, Lauren?" she asked after I'd settled into the surprisingly comfortable chair across from her. The words came in a rush. 3 years of payments. The excluded vacation. The lies. The gaslighting. Henry's family treating me like an A-team. By the time I finished, I'd used half the tissue box and my chest felt lighter than it had in months. Dr. Chen listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making a small note. When I finally ran out of words, she leaned forward slightly. "Lauren, what you're describing is financial abuse," she said gently. "It's real, it's valid, and it's not your fault." "I feel so stupid," I admitted. "How did I not see it?" "Because it started small. Because you loved him. Because they were careful to make you feel like you were helping, not being used. Financial abuse is insidious precisely because it masquerades as love and family obligation. And the vacation, excluding me while taking my money, is emotional abuse. They isolated you from family events while accepting your financial support. They made you feel like an outsider while profiting from your inclusion." The validation hit me like a wave. Someone else saw it. Someone professional, trained, objective, saw exactly what they'd done to me. "I've started separating my finances," I told her. "Opened my own account." "That's a huge step," Dr. Chen said. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying," I admitted. "And free." We talked for the full hour, and when I left, I'd scheduled appointments for the next month. $2,800 I'd saved by not sending it to Nancy would cover therapy for quite a while. Thursday and Friday I spent my breaks at work on my phone, scrolling through apartment listings. Everything close to the hospital was either too expensive or too sketchy. But Friday afternoon I found it. A 1-bedroom in a building that used to be a Catholic school, converted to apartments. Clean, safe, and only 10 minutes from work. I called immediately. The landlord, Mrs. Patterson, had a voice that reminded me of my grandmother's. "Can you come by tomorrow morning?" she asked. "Say 10 o'clock? Saturday I told Henry the first was picking up an extra shift. Instead I drove to the converted school building. Mrs. Patterson was waiting outside, a woman in her 70s with silver hair and knowing eyes. "You're the nurse from St. Mary's?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." She led me up 1 flight of stairs to a corner unit. When she opened the door, morning sunlight flooded through windows that actually opened. The floors were original hardwood, scratched but clean. The kitchen was small but had a gas stove. The bathroom had a clawfoot tub. "I was a nurse too," Mrs. Patterson said, watching me take it all in. "Retired 5 years ago. I know that look, the one that says you need a fresh start. Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been there." She handed me the rental application. "Take your time. If you need it today, it's yours." I filled out the application using my maiden name, Lauren Mitchell. Felt like writing my real name for the first time in years. "When can I move in?" I asked, handing her the completed forms and deposit check from my new account. "Whenever you're ready," she said, giving me the keys. "Sometimes the best time to start over is right now." That night was Henry's monthly poker game with Jake and their friends. He left at 7, kissing my cheek absently, already texting the group about beer preferences. The moment his car pulled away, I began. I moved methodically through the apartment, taking only what was mine before the marriage or absolutely essential. My nursing textbooks, the coffee maker I'd bought myself, clothes that still fit my grandmother's jewelry box. Each item went into boxes I'd grabbed from the hospital loading dock. The wedding china stayed. The picture stayed. 7 years of accumulated couple stuff stayed. At the kitchen table, I arranged the printed bank statements in chronological order. 36 months of evidence. Next to them, I placed my wedding ring, the tiny diamond catching the overhead light one last time. Then the note written in my steadiest handwriting. I've withdrawn my funding and myself from this arrangement. Your family can support you now. By the time Henry's car pulled into the parking lot at midnight, I was in my new apartment, sitting on the floor with just a sleeping bag and the satisfaction of escape. The first voicemail came Tuesday morning while I was checking on a patient. Nancy's number on my missed calls. I listened to it during my break. Lauren, honey, it's Mom. The presumption of her calling herself that made my skin crawl. There must be some confusion at the bank. The transfer didn't come through. Could you check on that? Call me back. Wednesday brought another. Lauren, the mortgage company called. This is serious. We need that payment today. Please call back. By Thursday her tone had shifted. How could you do this to family? After everything we've done for you? We could lose the house. I deleted each message after listening once. No guilt, no second guessing. Just a mild satisfaction like watching someone who'd cut you off in traffic get pulled over by police. You look different, Beth mentioned during shift change Thursday night. Better. More rested or something. Finally getting enough sleep, I said, which was true. In my new apartment, I slept without Henry's snoring, without the anxiety of bills I couldn't track, without the weight of funding people who despised me. Friday afternoon, Melissa struck back through social media. The photo appeared on Instagram while I was eating lunch in the hospital cafeteria. The lake house, beautiful in afternoon light with a red and white for sale sign stabbed into the front lawn. Her caption was pure manipulation. Thanks to some people's selfishness, childhood memories are being sold. 30 years of family gatherings gone. Some people only see dollar signs where we see home. The comments section became a battlefield. Relatives I'd never met called me heartless, selfish, a gold digger, which was hilarious considering I'd been the one giving gold, not digging for it. Someone named Aunt Helen wrote a novel-length comment about young wives these days, not understanding sacrifice. But then Susan from my night shift found the post. Sweet Susan, who'd covered for me during my worst days, who'd seen me counting pennies for lunch while sending thousands to Henry's family. Her comment was brief but devastating. Maybe if you'd treated her like family instead of an ATM, she'd still be helping. Just a thought. Melissa deleted it within minutes, but not before Susan screenshotted it. By end of shift, half the nursing staff had seen the exchange. They'd adopted me as their cause. These women who understood exhaustion and sacrifice and being undervalued. That witch, Beth said looking at the screenshot. Posting that after taking your money for years? The audacity. Saturday morning Henry started his campaign. The first email arrived at 6 a.m., 3 pages long, single-spaced, detailing our entire relationship history and why I was making a mistake. I deleted it unread after the first paragraph. The flowers came next. Delivered to the hospital reception desk during my Saturday shift. Roses, 24 with a card that said, "Please come home. We can work this out. H." The receptionist, Maria, who'd heard the whole story through the hospital grapevine, gave me a look. "Want me to donate these to the cardiac ward?" "Perfect," I said. "The patients will appreciate them more than I do." Sunday he escalated. I was leaving through the employee exit after my shift when I saw him waiting by my car. He looked terrible, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, the pallor of someone who hadn't been sleeping. "Lauren, please. Just 5 minutes. Move away from my car, Henry. We need to talk about us. There is no us. There's you and your family and me and my self-respect. Those are 2 different relationships. That's not fair." Fair. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fair would have been inviting me to the vacation I paid for. Fair would have been telling me the truth about where our money went. Fair would have been treating me like a wife instead of a bank. He tried to block my car door. That's when Officer Johnson appeared. Hospital security had apparently been watching from inside. "Sir, you need to leave hospital property," Johnson said, his hand resting on his radio. "This is my wife." Who has asked you to move away from her vehicle? Let's go. As Johnson escorted Henry toward the visitor parking lot, Henry called back. This isn't over, Lauren. We're married. Not for much longer, I replied, getting into my car. The nurses at the evening shift change had apparently watched the whole thing from the break room windows. When I went back in to clock out properly, they gave me a quiet round of applause. Dr. Martinez appeared with a cup of coffee. You okay, Mitchell? He'd started using my maiden name without being asked. Better than okay, I said, accepting the coffee. Free. Monday's text from Henry tried a different angle. Jake lost his bike. Had to sell his jackets too. He loved those jackets. Hope you're happy. Jake, who hadn't worked in 2 years, who'd spent his days riding around on a motorcycle Nancy paid for with my money, had finally met consequences. I took a photo of the new scrubs I'd bought myself, the first new work clothes I'd had in 2 years, and sent it back. I love being able to afford work clothes. Funny how that works. He didn't respond to that one. Through the hospital grapevine, I learned more about the family's collapse. Jake had taken a warehouse job, his first real employment since I'd known him. The lake house had multiple offers but all below asking price. Apparently, the dock really did need those repairs Nancy had mentioned. Henry had moved back in with his parents to help them through this difficult time, though I suspected it was because he couldn't afford our apartment alone. Nancy left one final voicemail that week. I hope you can live with yourself destroying a family like this. We welcomed you in and this is how you repay us. I saved that one. Not out of guilt but as a reminder. They'd welcomed my money, not me. And now, finally, they were learning the difference. I listened to Nancy's voicemail one more time before deleting it forever. Her words, destroying a family, echoed in my empty apartment as I packed for a trip I'd been planning for weeks. 2 months of saving my own money, 2 months of not funding their lifestyle, and I finally had enough for something I'd only dreamed about. A solo trip to Sedona. The Red Rocks had called to me since nursing school when a classmate showed photos from her vacation there. Back then I'd promised myself that someday when I had money I'd go. Now I realized I'd always had the money. I'd just been giving it away to people who didn't value me enough to invite me to dinner. The flight was early morning, cheaper that way. I'd learned to appreciate small savings now that I was keeping my earnings. The middle seat didn't bother me. The crying baby 2 rows back didn't faze me. I was flying toward something instead of running from something, and that made all the difference. Sedona in October was perfect. Warm days, cool nights, golden light that made the Red Rocks glow like they were lit from within. I'd booked a modest hotel, nothing fancy, just clean and quiet with a view of Thunder Mountain from my window. That first evening, I sat on the small balcony with a cup of tea, watching the sunset paint the rocks in shades I didn't have names for. The next morning, I started the Cathedral Rock Trail at sunrise. The hike was harder than I'd expected, steep, requiring actual climbing in parts. My legs burned, my chest heaved in the thin air, but I kept going. Other hikers passed me, younger, fitter, but I didn't care. This wasn't a race. This was a pilgrimage. Halfway up, sitting on a ledge to catch my breath, my phone buzzed. I'd forgotten to put it on airplane mode. The notification was an email. Nancy had sent something to what looked like every email address in her contacts. The subject line, the truth about Lauren Mitchell. I almost deleted it immediately. Then curiosity won. I opened it as the morning sun warmed the red rock beneath me. It was 3 paragraphs of poison. How I'd destroyed their family. How I'd manipulated Henry. How I'd pretended to care only to pull the rug out from under them when they needed me most. She detailed their financial struggles. The lost lake house, Jake's repossessed motorcycle, their current reduced circumstances, and blamed it all on my vindictive withdrawal of support. The email was sent to 43 people. Relatives, their church friends, even some names I recognized as Henry's coworkers. She'd put everyone in the to field, not even bothering with the dignity of BCC. I sat on that red rock looking out over the valley below and felt nothing. No anger. No hurt. Just a strange lightness, like watching a storm pass by without getting wet. I hit reply all. My response was simple, factual, and devastating. I contributed $100,800 over 3 years while being excluded from family gatherings. I was told the annual lake trip was canceled due to budget constraints, then saw photos of everyone there except me. You're not struggling because I stopped giving. You're struggling because you never learned to live within your actual means. I wish you all the best in your adjusted circumstances. Please remove me from future communications. I hit send, then turned my phone completely off. The rest of the hike was pure meditation. Just me, the rocks, and the vast Arizona sky. At the summit, sitting with other hikers who'd made the climb, I felt more at peace than I had in years. A woman about my age sat nearby, also alone, also taking in the view. First time, she asked. Yes. You. Third. I come after every major life change. Divorce, career change, and now retirement. These rocks have seen it all. We sat in comfortable silence, two strangers who understood that some journeys you have to take alone. By the time I returned home 3 days later, the lake house had gone to auction. Melissa, of course, documented everything on social media. Photos of the for sale sign. Videos of people viewing the property. A final photo of her standing by the dock with the caption, "Goodbye to childhood memories." Some people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. I was at work when the actual auction happened, my hands steady as I inserted an 4 into an elderly man's fragile veins. His daughter stood nearby, anxious, and I recognized something in her eyes. She'd been following Melissa's posts. "You're the nurse," she said quietly. "From the Instagram posts. The one who..." I kept my focus on my patient, professional, calm. "My ex-husband's family did the same thing," she continued. Took, then called me selfish when I stopped giving. "You're brave." "Just practical," I said, securing the 4. "Your father's going to be fine. This medication will help with the pain." As I held her father's hand during the procedure, I realized something. These hallways, these patients, these colleagues who'd rallied around me, this was my real family. People who valued my skill, my compassion, my presence. Not my bank account. The divorce papers were ready 2 weeks later. My lawyer, paid for with my own money, had made it simple. No fault divorce. No alimony requested from either side. Just a clean break. I had Henry served at his parents' rental apartment. The process server told me later that Henry had answered the door looking like he'd aged 5 years in 5 months. Wrinkled shirt, hollow eyes, the look of a man whose comfortable life had collapsed. He called me immediately after being served. "Lauren, please. We can work this out. Come to the apartment. Let's talk. There's nothing to discuss. Sign the papers." I made mistakes. You made choices. So did I. Mine was to stop funding people who excluded me. "Sign the papers, Henry." Through the window, the process server said. Nancy had been watching, her face pressed against the glass like a child at a candy store she couldn't afford to enter anymore. 2 days later, the signed papers arrived at my lawyer's office. Henry had signed every page, his signature getting shakier as they progressed. Thanksgiving came 6 months after I'd left. The invitation arrived at my new apartment. Fancy cardstock that Nancy must have bought before their financial crisis. "Despite everything, you're still family," she'd written in her perfect cursive. "Please join us for Thanksgiving dinner." The return address was their rental apartment, not the lake house. The dinner would be in a cramped dining room, not overlooking the water. The turkey would be store-bought, not the organic free-range bird they used to serve. I was working Thanksgiving anyway. Holiday pay was too good to pass up, and the hospital needed staff. But even if I'd been free, my answer would have been the same. I sent the invitation back with a single line written across it. "Family doesn't require payment for admission." Then I blocked every number. Henry's, Nancy's, Jake's, Melissa's, even the cousins who'd called me heartless. One by one, I erased them from my phone, from my life, from my future. That Thanksgiving evening at the hospital, after blocking every number, I worked my shift with unusual lightness. The emergency department was busy, holidays always were, but I moved through the chaos with clarity I'd never had before. No phone buzzing with guilt trips. No mental calculations about money I couldn't track. Just the work, the patience, and the peculiar freedom of being completely disconnected from people who drain me dry. "Mitchell, you want some turkey?" Dr. Martinez held out a plate from the break room spread. The hospital always did something nice for holiday staff. "Thanks," I said, accepting it. Real turkey, real stuffing, real belonging. No one here expected payment for inclusion. The months that followed blurred together in the best way. Winter became spring. Spring became summer. I learned to cook for one without feeling lonely. I decorated my apartment with plants. A snake plant by the window, pothose trailing from a bookshelf, a peace lily that bloomed unexpectedly in July. They thrived in the natural light from windows that actually opened, unlike our old apartment where everything felt trapped. My bank account did something I'd never seen before. It grew. Without the hemorrhage of $2,800 monthly, plus the promotion to shift supervisor I'd earned 6 months after leaving Henry, I watched the numbers climb. Not dramatically, not wealth by any means, but enough. Enough for car repairs without panic. Enough for new work shoes without guilt. Enough for the occasional nice dinner without checking the price 3 times. The hospital newsletter editor approached me in August. "We're doing a series on financial wellness for healthcare workers. Would you consider writing something?" I wrote about recognizing financial abuse without naming names. About how it starts small, just helping out temporarily. About how it grows, family emergency after family emergency. About how it hides, behind love, obligation, guilt. About how it ends, when you finally value yourself more than their approval. The response overwhelmed me. Colleagues I'd worked with for years pulled me aside quietly. "This happened to me too. My ex-wife's family did the same thing. I'm still in it. How did you get out?" I started an informal support group. Thursday evenings, my apartment, tea and honest conversation. We called it Financial Boundaries for Caregivers, because nurses, we discovered, were particularly vulnerable to this kind of exploitation. We were trained to help, to sacrifice, to put others first. That made us perfect targets for financial manipulation. One Thursday in September, exactly 1 year after that supply closet phone call, I received a letter. Handwritten, no return address, but I recognized Henry's writing. I almost threw it away unopened. Then curiosity won. His handwriting was different. Smaller, more careful, like he was measuring each word. "Lauren, I'm writing this from my studio apartment, the one I can actually afford with the 2 jobs I'm working now. Funny how I never understood what work meant until I had to do it myself. I see now what we took from you. Not just money. Dignity. Respect. Belonging. We made you pay for the privilege of being excluded, and I let it happen. Worse, I orchestrated it. Mom still blames you. Melissa posts about family loyalty. Jake complains about the warehouse job. They don't get it. But I do now. We weren't a family. We were parasites. And I was the worst one because I was supposed to love you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that one person from that mess finally understands what we did to you. It was wrong. It was cruel. And you deserved so much better. I hope you found it. Henry." I read it once, sitting at my small dining table with a cup of coffee. Felt a moment of sadness for the marriage that could have been if he'd been this honest from the start. Then I filed it away in a box labeled, "Past," and went on with my day. 2 months later, Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door. "Did you see the obituary?" Nancy had passed. Heart attack at 67. The funeral would be Saturday at the Lake Town church they'd attended when they had the lake house. Before they lost everything. I didn't go. But I wasn't surprised when, 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from a law firm. Nancy's will, executed years ago when they had money and I was still the dutiful daughter-in-law, had never been updated. She'd left me her jewelry collection. Melissa contested it immediately, of course. But the will was ironclad, written back when Nancy had been playing the loving mother-in-law, probably thinking the jewelry would keep me grateful and giving. The irony was perfect. She'd accidentally given me one final payment from beyond the grave. The collection appraised at $15,000. Good pieces, real gold quality gems. Things she'd worn to family gatherings I wasn't invited to, purchased with money I'd helped provide. I sold every piece to a dealer downtown, then drove directly to the women's shelter on Maple Street. The director, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, accepted the cashier's check with surprise. "This is incredibly generous. Would you like to name the donation? For our records." "Call it the Family Fund," I said. "For women finding their real families after losing fake ones." She studied my face with the recognition of someone who'd heard similar stories. "The Family Fund it is." Today marks 2 years since that Instagram video. 2 years since my world shifted. I volunteered for the sunrise shift, wanting to mark the anniversary with something meaningful, work that actually mattered. The drive to the hospital at 5 a.m. was perfect. Empty streets, classical music on the radio, coffee in my travel mug. The good stuff I could afford now. The sky lightened gradually, painting clouds in shades of peach and gold. My phone tucked in my bag stayed silent. No desperate texts about urgent needs. No voicemails about destroyed families. No guilt trips disguised as invitations. Just peace. I parked in my designated spot, one of the perks of being a supervisor, and walked toward the employee entrance. The automatic doors sensed me coming and opened with their familiar whoosh, like the building itself was welcoming me home. If this story of financial betrayal and sweet independence had you cheering for Lauren, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Lauren texted back, "Ask your family," after discovering the truth about that lake house vacation. What was your favorite moment of justice? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.